Now we're going to resolve our practice for this chapter 1 of the Ricardan model. The first questions are questions about something that can be true or false. So let's see the statements and then answer its case. The first one is telling something like, if an economy is producing on its production possibility frontiers, I mean in any of these possible points, it is using all its available resources. The answer is true. We know that here are all of them different combination of production between two goods, good 1 and 2, and that all the combination of the two goods that are on that curve, they are going to be feasible, so possible, and also efficient because we are using all the resources. And in the case of the Ricardan model, that means we are using all the labor that the economy has. About the second one, if an economy is producing on its production possibility frontier, it must produce less of one good to produce more of another good. That is also true, because for instance, we are in a point like this. So this is the level of production of the good 1. Imagine that this is, for instance, 10, and this is 2. If I want to produce more of the good 2, let's say 1 unit more, by sure I'm going to produce less of the other good. Let's say now instead of 10 it's going to be 9. How is that? Because in this point I'm using all my resources, so all my labor. If I want to produce more of the other goods, I need to use part of the labor that is in the other sector. So to produce 1 unit more of this good, I have to reduce the production of the other good. Okay? That's why we were talking about the opportunity cost, which is the number of units, in this case of the good 1, I'm going to give up in the production because I'm going to produce 1 unit more of the good 2. So that is the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit more of the good 2. Next question, points outside of the PPF, so over here, outside, are feasible but inefficient. No, that is false. They are not feasible, they are not possible, because we need more labor to get those level of production. Keep in mind that the 0 point is here, so if you go up or to the right side, you are talking about more production of the good 1 and more production of the good 2. These points over here, so they are level of production of both good 1 or good 2 that are not possible, because we know that the maximum level of production for each good is going to be between these two values. I mean, all these possible combination, that is when we are using all our resources. So it's not possible to produce any combination in which we are going to produce more of the other good or the both of them. About efficiency, it's not feasible. It can be efficient, probably, for a different level of production. Over here, it could be the case that here can be another PPF, but that is a different economy with the level of production is determined by labor. So in that economy, the volume of workers is higher. But here, given that labor, it's not possible to get any level of production over or outside of this PPF. So that's why it's false. Finally, if an economy has a high level of unemployment, so that means workers that is not working. It is because it is producing below its PPF, and that is true. If you remember, all these possible combination of the two goods are possible, of course, but the problem of them is that you are not using all your resources. That's why you can increase the production of one of the good or the other, or even both. How? Using all your workers that you have. So unemployment here is a synonymous of the fact that you are not using all your resources in this model, all your labor. The next question is about to choose which one is the right one. Let's start with the first one. Which of the following variables is or are productive factors. So here we are going to have labor, capital, money, and the last answer is all of them. And that is the right answer. Why is that? Labor is one of the production factors. In fact, it's the one that we are using in the Ricardan model. Capital is also a production factor, and money, in fact, is capital, okay? Because inside of capital we have many things. But, we are talking about machines. We also are talking about like building, where you have your production. So also in the places in which you can stock all your resources, all the raw material that you use for the production. And eventually all of those stuff can be quantified in monetary terms. So money also is capital. And all of those resources can be, as I said, transformed in money. So here we have labor. I said is a production factor. Thanks to labor you are able to produce. Capital, in terms that is the machinery, all the physical resources that you use for producing, that is capital. And money, with the money you can buy all those machineries, things, and all that building that you need to develop your business. So the right answer is all of them, as I said. 2. Which of the following events could then produce a shift of the PPF course? When we are talking about shift, it's because this PPF move to the right side or the left side. Okay? So let's start. Technological breakthrough. No, that is going to change the PPF. So that is not the answer. How is that? Because you can see that in the Ricardan model, technology is there, it's in that model. How? With the unit labor requirement here of the good one of labor, because in that model it's just labor, okay? So that's why I omitted the L for labor, because it's the only production factor. And the unit labor requirement in the other sector here too. And that is determined by the technology of that economy. If you remember, that is the number of workers that you need to produce one unit. Imagine that this is 3 units of workers per 1 unit of the good one, and this is 5. And now there is a new technology that makes something like this. Instead of 3, it's just 1, and instead of 5, it's just 2. So that means that now you need less workers to produce 1 unit of the good one or 1 unit of the good 2. That is going to involve that your possibility of production is going to be much more higher than before, like going to the right side. In fact, if you remember, the maximum amount of the production of this good is determined by the number of workers in that economy, the total number of workers, divided by the unit labor requirement in that sector. So the maximum amount of Q1 depends on labor, but also depends on your technology. As smaller is this, higher is going to be the maximum production of that good. The same thing with the other. And this is just for the 2 extreme values. So as lower is this, all of this is higher, so we are going to be like this. This is for the 2 extreme cases, but the same thing is going to happen with all the possible combinations. Okay? In fact, we can have a change in the slope of the PPF. If one of the chains is higher than in the other case, we can observe that this one is even higher than this one. And in fact, you remember, the slope of this curve is the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit more of this good 2, where it's the same as unit labor requirement of the good 2 over the unit labor requirement of the good, that is here, in this case, good 1. So if the technology changes, this is going to change. So it's not just a change in terms of the shape of the curve, but also we can observe a change in the slope. More. So that is going to change the PPF. It's going to shift the PPF. B. The increase in the labor force. That also is going to change the PPF. We are going to have a different PPF. It's going to move. It's going to shift. How is that? Labor is here. So the PPF is determined by labor. If labor changes, if it's bigger, you can produce more. So the PPF is going to go to the right side and also up. Okay? If it's less, for any reason you are suffering, like now the coronavirus, but imagine a virus that is affecting not just old people, but people who is working. Well, in fact, we have people that is not dying, but they are not working because they are suffering the consequence of that illness. So that's going to mean that the PPF is going to move to the left side, right? So that is going to shift the PPF. And increasing the stock of capital. Capital, we don't have capital in the Ricardan model, but as we said previously, it's a production factor. So that means as higher is your level of capital, your possibilities of production are going to be higher. So, for instance, my more capital, the PPF is going to move, okay? And G, that is the one that is not going to shift the PPF. And reduction of unemployment. What is that? When you are observing unemployment, it's because you're here. You're, for instance, it's one of the possible points, okay? All of the points that are below of the PPF is one example of unemployment. If you increase or reduce the unemployment, if you change that, the only thing that you are going to observe is that point change from here to here, for instance, or here. From here to here is less unemployment, and here is more unemployment. But the possibility of production is the same. Your capacity of producing doesn't change. It's changing the thing that you are actually doing. You are doing things better or even worse. But the potential of your economy is not changing because of that. Okay? You can improve your development going to this point which is efficient, or even do things worse like this, in which you have many workers that are not producing a thing. Okay? But that is not going to change your capacity of production. Now we have the next information. We have two people, Patricia and Ramiro. Each of them are bakers, and they are able to produce two kinds of goods: breads, units of breads, or cakes. We also have information about the maximum amount that they can produce for each good. So in the case of Patricia, is able to get 18 units of bread, or when it's just focused on cakes, is able to get 6 units. And in the case of Ramiro, we have 16 for bread and 4 in the case of cake. So the question here is about the opportunity cost of producing one cake. So the thing that we need to know is how it's going to change the production of bread if we want to produce 1 unit more of cake, as I said. In this case, I think that the best way of working is making the PPF course. For me, it's the easy way. So here we are going to have that information for the case of Patricia, and here for the case of Ramiro. We have bread here and cake here. Of course, here the same way. The result is going to change. The result is going to change depending on if I put here cake versus bread or vice versa. No, the result is going to be always the same. It's the result. But it's true that in this case, because they are asking me about the opportunity cost of cake, I want to put here cake. Okay? Because we normally face this kind of problem talking about the slope of the curve. And the slope of the curve is the opportunity cost of producing the good that is here. In this case, cake. Okay, so the slope always is the same as the opportunity cost of the good that is in this horizontal axis. So here is this 80, so when Patricia is just producing bread, is able to get this 18 units, and when it's just producing cake, that's 6 units. And the same thing for Ramiro, here bread and here cake. So now, the thing that I want to get, as I said, is the slope, because that is the opportunity cost of this good. And the slope, in fact, is telling me how does it change this variable that is here when this increase in 1 unit? And we know that is going to be negative, right? If I produce more cake, I have to produce less bread, otherwise it's impossible. So it's telling me just the opportunity cost of cake. It's the thing that I want. That's why we are going to use the slope. How is the way of getting the slope, or in which terms we are going to do it? Well, I'm going to take the 2 points that I have, and with that is enough in this case. I'm going from this point to this point. Why is that? Because I want to evaluate how change this when this increase in 1 unit. In this point, the number of cakes is 0. You see, cake is in the is in the horizontal, so here is the 0 value. So here, the value of cake is 0. Well, here is 6. So if I'm going from this point to this point, I'm going to see the effect of producing more cake against bread. In fact, bread, it was in this point 18 because it's in the vertical, but in this point its value is 0, right? So it's something like this. I said I'm going from this point to this point, but in fact, in practice terms, it doesn't matter. Why is that? Because I'm going to introduce the absolute terms. So that's means I don't care the sign. If it's negative, like it's going to be by sure, I don't care. I'm going to just keep the positive sign. Because I know this is opportunity cost. In fact, the thing that I want to get is opportunity cost. And the term cost is just something negative. That's why I don't need to introduce this sign. Okay, so I'm going to, sorry, I'm going to have here a combination of bread. I want to see the effect. How does it change when I produce more cake? So that's why I'm going to put here the variation of bread. How this variable is going to change when I change the production of cakes. In fact, always I try to do the final value minus the initial value. Final value in the case of bread, here is the final value because I'm coming from here to here is 0 minus 18, that is the initial value. And in the case of cake, here the value is 0, but the final value is 6, so 6 minus 0, and the division is 3. What is that? What is the meaning of that? That is, if I want to produce 1 unit more of cake, I have to produce 3 units less of bread. In fact, you can see that here I have the variation of bread. How does it change? You see, it's a negative. It's going to reduce. But this change, this whole change, this distance between 0 and 18 is because the production of cake changed not in 1 unit, in 6 units, okay, coming from 0 to 6. I want to know the opportunity cost per unit. That's why I have to make the division. And then I have how many units of bread I have to give up for per unit of a cake. And that is opportunity cost of producing 1 unit more of cake. That is for the case of Patricia. The same terms I have for the case of Ramiro. In fact, we are observing that this opportunity cost of producing 1 unit more of cake is smaller in the case of Patricia than in the case of Ramiro. In fact, if we were talking about international trade or trade, and we are considering that both agents want to sell both kind of goods in the most efficient way, the thing that we should expect is that Patricia is going to produce cakes, instead Ramiro is going to produce bread. And they are going to trade between each other. They are going to change one good for the other. And then they are going to be able to sell that goods in a much more efficient way, with lower prices and then, well, lower costs, and then they can introduce lower prices in the market, okay? But that is about international trade, that is not the question here. Also, something interesting, if we were talking about international trade and we take as reference the absolute advantage theory, Here we can see that we don't have trade. Why is that? Because Patricia has an absolute advantage in bread, but also in cake. She's able to produce both goods in a much more efficient way than Ramiro. So following that theory, here there is no trade. In fact, that theory is not perfect because in the real life we are going to observe trade. And that trade is coming from the comparative advantage, where each economic agent is going to focus in the production in which in relative terms they are assuming a lower opportunity cost. Here, Patricia, 4 cakes. In fact, you can get also the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit more of bread. In that case, instead of 3 here, you are going to have 1/3. And here you are going to have 1/4. And that is the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit more of bread. 1/4 is lower than 1/3. So that is telling me that Ramiro is the one that has a comparative advantage in the case of bread. Of course, because Patricia has that comparative advantage in the case of cakes. Always is going to be the inverse, because in fact this is the inverse. One opportunity cost is the inverse of the other opportunity cost in one good bread versus the other good cake. About the next question, number 4, we already know the answer because it's about these statements, okay? So the answer is B. Patricia has a comparative advantage in the production of cakes, while Ramiro has that comparative advantage in the production of bread. And the last question, before starting the international trade part, is this question number 5. Here we have, or the question is, the concave shape of the production possibility from here so as, well, first of all, the difference between concave and convex. This is a concave, okay, and this for us is going to be a convex. It's just the opposite that the traditional way of talking when we were in the high school. That's why I want to emphasize that. So take note of this. Okay, that was the starting point. Now let's see what is the right answer. Is going to be B, but let me start with, for instance, A. That to produce more quantity of one good, one must give up producing quantities of the other good. That is not because of the shape of the PPF. Okay, that is a PPF, but it's not telling anything about the shape, the concave shape in this case versus the convex in this case. So that's why that is not the answer. B. That the opportunity cost of the good X in terms of Y is increasing as the production of the good X is growing. Let's say that this is, for instance, X. It doesn't matter because the analysis is the same. If you have X here or Y here or vice versa. Okay, the relation between both goods is the same, it's symmetric. Okay. That is the answer. Why? Because it's telling me that the opportunity cost is not constant, it's increasing when you are producing more of one of the two goods. And that is happening here. Just keep in mind that the slope of this curve is the opportunity cost of this. The slope is not constant. So, well, it's telling me something about the shape of the slope of the PPF. In fact, we know that as when we have a curve, if it has a slope very steep, it's because the opportunity cost is higher than in a case in which the slope is flatter. So the thing that we just need to look is the slope in different points. So here the slope is quite flat, so the opportunity cost is not really high, but here the slope is higher. So we are observing that the opportunity cost of X is increasing as higher is the production of X. What is the meaning of that? The meaning of that is, if I increase in 1 unit the production of X here, it's going to have a small opportunity cost in terms of the other good. While when I am already producing a lot of units of X, like this, increase in 1 unit, like here, in 1 unit, the production of X, it's going to give me as result that the production of Y is going to be, the production is going to decrease much more than previously. Why is that? We are going to see why is that, in which context we can see something like that in the coming chapter. Okay, so now the thing that you need to know is that the slope is telling you about the opportunity cost of this good. Okay, and here we have just the opposite. You can see that the slope is really steep here and smaller here. That's why this is not the case. Here, as higher is the production of this X, smaller is the opportunity cost. That means the reduction of Y. In fact, if we start from a point like this, and we increase in 1 unit production of this is a high reduction in comparison, for instance, a point like this. We have this, and then we want to produce 1 unit more. So here we have a lower opportunity cost. Okay? So, that is answer C. So this is true for the case of a convex instead of concave, okay? And that's all, because no answer is correct. So now we are going to answer those questions, multiple choice questions about international trade. The first one said something like, according to the new theories of trade, countries trade since, well, this is something that you don't really have in your note about the Ricardan model, but it's something that you must know. And the thing is that when we are talking about the new trade theories, those theories are not based in what is the differences across country, as I said at the very beginning of the Ricardan model. Instead of that, they are based on that concept that I call economies of scale. But also, they are based on a different concept, which is the law of parity. So here we are talking about theories where they are explaining trade, but no based on differences in terms of production, in terms of resources or productivity of the production factors. So I mean, I'm talking about technology or something like that. Even between countries which are almost identical, we are going to observe trade, international trade, and that is coming from the economies of scale that makes firms enjoy lower average costs when they are producing a huge amount of one specific good. Okay? And also we are going to see international trade because the love of parity that people have in their economies. Imagine like in the car industry, and imagine that here in Spain we are able to produce one brand that is Seat. That is not the case anymore, but well, imagine that here we are able to produce that kind of car, Seat. But you are going to find that even in the case that we are producing one brand of car, many people are going to will to buy a different brands. Why? Because they don't want to have the same car than their neighbors. Instead of that, we love parity. So that is going to be one additional reason for international trade. It's not just a matter about that you are producing something. It's a matter that you want to have something different to the rest of the people. Okay? So the parity is something good, and that's why instead of just consuming the thing that is producing inside your economy, you want to buy from abroad. So the right answer here is D. Okay, what is right? The answer A, consumers love parity, and the answer C, firms want to exploit economies of scale. As I said, if you are a firm that you are able to enjoy economies of scale, that means that as higher is the amount of goods that you are producing, you are going to enjoy lower lower cost, average cost, so you are going to be able to charge lower prices. Okay, so 2. Under the David Ricardian model, countries have technological differences, right? These technological differences are revealed by, and the answer that is right is D. differences in factor productivity. So technology here is going to make that the productivity of the production factor is going to be different given that technology. And more specifically, when we are in the Ricardan model, we just including one production factor, that is labor. But something similar it can happen if we introduce also capital as production factor. Okay, so it's not going to be that the level of labor depends on technology. No, you have level of workers, level of labor, but it doesn't depend on technology. The same thing as resources endowment or natural resources, or about the physical capital differences among economies. Okay, so technology is something that is going to affect the productivity of the production factors. That can be labor or capital. Number 3, according to the different theories of trade, and the right answer is C, countries can trade even if they are almost identical. Yeah, that is coming from that new trade theory, that even in the case that the two economies that we are considering are equal in terms of technology or endowment, even in that case we are going to find trade. Let's see why the others are not right, okay? So A, international trade only exists between countries with absolute advantage in producing different goods. That is false. We already said that even in the case of one economy is the best doing everything while the other is the worst, even in that case we are going to find trade. So it's not just existing when one economy has an absolute advantage in one good while the other in the other. Good. B, international trade only exists between countries that have a comparative advantage in producing different goods. As I said, no, even in the case that countries are identical, we're going to find trade. And D, countries that do not have an absolute advantage do not have a comparative advantage either. That is false. We can find, as I said, an economy that is not really good doing anything, so that economy doesn't have an absolute advantage in anything, but it can have a comparative advantage in any of the two good or more good in the real life. Now we are going to answer the question 4 and 5 inside of the section A Closed Economy. So here we have information about an economy, which is home, whose labor is 1,200 units of labor, so workers. Also we know that this economy is able to produce two kinds of goods, apples and bananas. This is the unit labor requirement in the case of apple, here for bananas. And then that is the whole information that we have for that economy. Here the question is, what of the following statements is the right one, the correct one? The answer is D, okay? Why? Because in the D answer we have that the productivity associated with associated to apples is 0.33. So productivity, if you remember, productivity is just inverse of the unit labor requirement, in the way that this is the number of workers that you need to get one unit, here of apple, here of banana. So as smaller is that number, higher is the productivity. So it's just inverse. In fact, the marginal productivity of labor in the case of apple here is going to be, as I said, the inverse number of the unit labor requirement. So this is 0.33, which is the right answer. Well, in fact, we have that for all the possible 4 answers. But what is the difference here? Well, in the other cases, well, A and B also is giving me the opportunity cost of apple. Here I have the way of calculating the opportunity cost of apple, and here is for the case of banana. Opportunity cost, if you remember, is really easy to get that value. It's going to be this one. It can be the slope of the PPF, but also you don't even need that. It's just the labor requirement of apple divided the unit labor requirement of the other good, bananas. So here we have that is 3/2, which is also in A and B. So that is right. While C is wrong. Why? Because it's talking about productivity of 0.5, which that data is for the case of banana. The opportunity cost of banana 2/5 is not even here. Okay, so 2/5, it doesn't make sense. So that is impossible. C is impossible. A and B, well, it can be because the productivity of apples, well, in that sector is 0.33. The opportunity cost of that good is 3/2. The problem is coming from the wages. In the case of A, is telling us that that sector is gathering the higher wages, while in the case of B, is telling us that that sector is gathering the lowers. And that is false because in a closed economy, wages are equal across sectors. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about the apple sector or the banana sector. In a closed economy, wages are always equal between that two sectors. Well, and that was for the exercise 4, but with the same information we can answer the exercise 5. In the exercise 5, the question is, well, the same. What of the following statements is right? And the right answer, the true one, is A, because it's telling us that the maximum units of banana that we can get is 600. How is the way of getting the maximum production of one specific good? Well, it's really easy. Total labor divided the number of labor or units of labor that I need for each unit. In the case of banana, is 400. In the case of, this is for apple, this is for banana. Apple 400, banana 600. So A is telling me that for the case of banana is 600, which is right. Also is right in C, but let's continue with the statement. And the relative price. How is the way of getting the relative price of banana? It's equal to the opportunity cost of banana. So this opportunity cost of banana is the same as the relative price of banana. Just remember, relative price of something, that thing has to be up. This is the relative price of apple, while this is the relative price of banana. And the meaning of this is, this number is the number of, the number of bananas that you can get in exchange of one apple. And here we have, this is the relative price of bananas, and this number is the number of apples that you can get for one banana. So the right answer, as I was telling you, it is A, because the relative price of banana is 2/3.